it's not changeable. So, you know, I can't sell my house right now because we're leaving tomorrow to go to Greece for a month, you know, and that's like, you know, it's already booked. You can't really do anything about that.
You can be a great salesperson. You can't,
Right, exactly.
you're not gonna do that, right?
Yeah,
Right.
an objection is basically an obstacle in the mind of the buyer or seller that you're dealing with, and basically implies that they just need more information. So that's a great mindset way that I try to think about it, is that they just don't have enough information, and that's your ticket in. Like you're almost asking you for guidance,
more information.
Yeah.
And you know, you would need more information too, because you haven't cracked the code yet. Right. How am I going to get over this speed bump? I'm going to need to find a little more information. You know, all of those who have kids who play those video games, you know how they talk, they play, and then they need to get to one level to unlock the key to the next level, right? And then from then on, they can start at that second level, and they have to crack more information to get to the next level. It's very much like that. So if someone says, oh, you know, let's pretend it's December, right? And you're talking to someone and they say, yeah, no, I do want to move. I've been thinking about moving out to Short Hills or Summit or wherever you think. And they say, oh, well, you know, at this point, we're not really ready. If you dig a little and you uncover that they're not ready because they're dependent on a bonus check that they're getting, and they're not going to get that till February 28th. They probably can't buy a house till February 28th if they don't have that money, and chances are you're not going to be able to overcome the objection with the boss to pay them the money early. That's a condition. But I like the way you say it, Ron. It's need for more information. So when you first get that sort of little brush off flick, they need more information and you need more information. One thing that you always want to think about when you're working with objections is that you want to isolate them. So sometimes people are sort of spewing all the things that are just sort of giving you stop signs. There could be any number of objections in that. You know, someone says, you know, well, no, I can't come out this weekend because I have a really busy schedule. My kids have soccer, and you know, I'm not sure if my husband's really ready yet. And, you know, we're just kind of thinking, there's a million objections in there. You very nicely and very slowly need to continue to dig down until you get to what the real one is. There might be several, but if the person threw out there that they can't come because the kid has a busy soccer schedule or whatever it is, people with busy soccer schedules have bought homes before. In digging deeply, maybe it was, you know, my husband's not really ready, I have to get him on board. Well, if we know that's the real objection, now we've isolated it. What we're going to do is going to be different. We're going to say something like, so I understand, it sounds like you're saying you're ready for this move a little bit more than your husband. So I'm thinking your husband probably needs a little more information before he can decide if he's either on board or not on board. Sounds to me like the best thing we need to do is set an appointment, or in this case, set up a Zoom call, so that I can talk to your husband a little bit and understand what his thoughts and concerns and question marks are, so we can see if it makes sense to move forward or not. If that was really the objection, we can throw a bunch of other crap at them. It's not going to hit, right? Can we all see how that wouldn't really hit until we got to the right thing?
Right.
So that's called isolating an objection. One thing that I'd love to suggest people do, there's a book called The Ultimate Guide. Hello, Amanda, by the way. The Ultimate Guide for Mastering Objections, The Art and Science of Getting Past No. Let me say that again. The Ultimate Guide for Mastering Objections, The Art and Science of Getting Past No. The author's name is Jed, I believe it's Blunt, B-L-O-U-N-D-T. You know, sometimes those business books or sales books or whatever, there's just 1 or 2 or 3 key points that someone can just tell you and you don't need to read it. This is one of those that you really should read. There's a ton of good stuff in there. And as professionals who deal with objections all day long, you got to read this kind of stuff to really sharpen your skills and be at the top of your game. So that for me is a very definite read. So what you want to do when you're thinking about objections is kind of see them as, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of want to train yourself to start to see objections as a win, because it's always going to lead you to the path of more information. Now, a lot of people, so many people, when they'll say to me, hey, Shannon, I have a question, and they'll call and they'll talk about a client and they'll give me a story about I said and he said and she said and da-da. A lot of people dance around asking the direct questions because psychologically it hurts to be told no, right? It's a failure. Even if we think we're above that, most of us aren't. It does, you really, really want this person to list with you, or you really, really want this person to buy a house. So you sometimes tap dance around stuff. Doesn't really work. I always use the doctor analogy, but if you go to the doctor and you think that you probably need open heart surgery, and you go to the doctor for a consultation, he's not going to dance, or she isn't going to dance around the questions they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you the direct questions to see if the two of you should engage one another in a professional relationship for the goal of your health. This is exactly the same. When you walk to the doctor, sure, we're all socially accustomed to them just handing us a clipboard and we fill it out. If only our lives in real estate were that easy. We haven't trained our clients as such, right? We don't get to hand them a clipboard. We have to build rapport, mirror and match, try to understand their motivation by asking probing questions. It's all a little bit dressed up, but it's the same damn thing as someone handing you the clipboard when you go to the doctor's office. So every time you ask them a question, you want to kind of be keeping very clear in your mind that that's what you're here for. And so people that feel sometimes like, we're often dealing with people who are going through major life transitions, right? Sometimes there's been a death or illness or change in financial circumstance or a divorce that they really aren't talking to anyone about. Or, they owe too much on their mortgage and they're afraid they might not even be able to sell their house. We're dealing with very personal stuff. And I think sometimes agents, particularly newer agents, sometimes dance around those direct questions. Don't go right for the kill, build the rapport, but don't. Realize that's your job. And if you get paid, that's what you're getting paid for. So keep the mindset, ask. Every answer you get, whether it's yes or no, is moving you closer either to saving a whole ton of time if they have conditions that you can't meet, or to moving closer to the finish line, which would be helping them meet their goal, whatever that may be. So what you want to first do is ask qualifying questions. And by you want to do that first, I definitely do mean after you build rapport and, make them feel comfortable and, do a lot of the things that we all would do instinctively. But then you really do want to ask for qualifying information. Now, each of us could make our own list of what's important. When I was selling, for me, I really felt pretty strongly that the social stuff was really important to me. It's not that I didn't need to know they were financially qualified. I did, but my brain, maybe it's because of my background, I used to be a psychotherapist, my brain always led towards let me really understand what's motivating this. What do they hope to gain by moving? What are the pain points they're running away from? What are the dangers if they don't move? What are the opportunities if they do move? What is it that their dreams are leading them to this community versus that community? Moving is a hassle, and if you're doing it, you're probably doing it for a reason. For me, in the way I practiced when I was selling, it was understanding the qualifying information around the social stuff that would cause someone to move, because it's such a pain in the neck, right? Then I would move to more of the concrete things, like, the financial qualification and whether or not they're realistic, what their budget is, and do they need 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, all the while making assumptions on whether or not those two things match up. So when you're asking people questions and you're always trying to uncovering the next objection, of course, the first thing that you're always trying to do, if you only have someone's phone number, what are you trying to do?
Set an appointment.
You're trying to set an appointment, right? Hold on, let me take my background. I want to use a little, I want to take off my background. Yeah, you're trying to set an appointment. This isn't going to work so well, maybe. You're going to be able to see that? Yeah, a little bit, right? So we're trying to set an appointment.
Right big.
If you have an appointment, sorry, what did you say?
Right big.
Right big. Can you see that or no? No. Oh, because you guys, yeah, you're right.
If you put it on
Wait, put it on, not on gallery. Put it on active speaker for the moment, maybe.
speaker view, yeah.
So you set an appointment. If you're in an appointment, what are you trying to? What's the action step you're trying to have happen?
Get a contract signed, or
Not really. I mean, maybe. But let me play devil's advocate. If you're sitting in a buyer consult with me, am I going to hand you a contract for house at 123 Main Street and write it up?
oh no, but a contract to work together, or
Right. Oh, okay. Yep. So a baby buyer contract.
right.
Right. Okay, fine. So let's call that some kind of engagement.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm too busy thinking about the other contract. What else? You're at an appointment. What are the other action steps that we're trying to get from them?
Motivation. Motivation. No.
You're trying, right? So you're trying to get qualifying info. So that's gonna, and let's talk about motivation and also financial.
And time frame.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so now we're at an appointment. We've asked the right questions, hopefully gotten engagement. We've asked the right questions, gotten all the information that we need. Generally speaking, what would be the next thing we're looking for? The action step. Let's assume it's a buyer.
Set up to take them to see houses.
Set up showings, right. Okay. Now we have them out seeing showings. It's the world of COVID. We only had to take them out once because we pre-qualified them so well and we did virtual showings. We see a house that they like. What are we trying to get them to do?
Make an offer.
An offer. Say yes.
Write an offer. Make an offer. Let's even say to be really concrete. Write an offer. Let's say we write an offer. It's not quite high enough. What do we want them to do?
Up their
Decide
price.
whether it's worth it to go.
Yeah, let's get them to raise the price.
How would they feel if they lost this house?
Say it again.
How would they feel if they lost this house? If it's the right house, how would you feel? So go as high as you can to where it won't matter anymore whether or not you move forward or you don't,
Yep.
right?
Yep. That makes perfect sense. So we write an original offer. They don't get it. We want them to raise the price. They raise the price. They get it. Now, the next thing we're probably going to want to have them do is select an attorney. Might be out of order, but you see where we're going. These are called micro steps, right? So when you are talking to a person the first time, you're all very clear that what you're trying to do is set an appointment. In this world, it might be a Zoom appointment or it might be a real appointment. So let's talk through some of the objections that you might get to setting an appointment. Does anybody have a recent example where they on the phone with somebody and they didn't get an appointment set in the original first question?
Yeah, well, it looks as though there's somebody living in the house and I really don't want to venture inside because of COVID.
Okay, great objection. I don't want to go inside because of COVID. Now, that's great. It's really clear. So let's talk about some scripts for handling that objection. Anybody want to take a stab?
Virtual showing.
Okay, so let's do it in great real estate scripties, Karen. Robin, let's role play, okay? You be the agent and I'll be the buyer. So I don't know, Robin. I mean, I do want to buy a home, but I'm just not sure I really want to go in houses. You know, I'm still a little worried about COVID.
I totally get that. And I understand a lot of people feel that way, but I have a great idea. How would you feel if I virtually showed you the house, where I'm in the house and we FaceTime each other and I go through the entire house with you live, and you can see whether you like it and whether it's worth seeing. We can kind of narrow down the houses in that way.
You know what? I think that's really great. I mean, you would do that for me? That's amazing.
I do it to every house you want to see.
Wow. Now, what Robin did that was amazing, and probably for her instinctive, is the first thing she did when I gave my objection was say, you know what, that's great, I totally understand that, or some sort of a positive reflexive response. If you train yourself to do one thing, that is the most important thing. Whatever somebody says, whether, you know, it's going to be an objection, and in a way that can feel almost argumentative sometimes, right? Depending on your mood. Instinctively, with every objection, filter it back with some sort of positive. That can be, I completely get that. Oh, I totally understand. If you don't totally understand, we might say, tell me more about that. Right? So let's back up. You still be the agent. We've been on a call, and you've sort of taken some qualifying information from me. So why don't you suggest looking at homes? You're going to be the agent. I'm not going to take it quite as easy on you. So
okay. Shannon, I saw a house the other day that I think would be great for you to see. It meets all of your requirements.
Oh, I don't know, Robin. I don't know. I'm just not sure. I mean, you know what? Let me talk to my husband, and I don't know. I'll think about it. I mean, I don't know what to do yet.
Okay, sure. I totally get that. What are you thinking? What's going on?
Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, I want to, but I'm not sure if it makes sense to go in the house or not yet. You know, I'm worried about COVID still, etc. So I'm not sure.
I know a lot of people are. Tell me, when do you guys need to move out of your house? I know you're getting transferred, and there's a time period in which you need to be in North Carolina.
Yeah, well, we do still have some temporary housing that we can stretch out a little longer if we need. I mean, ideally, I'd be in someplace at 90 days, but if we have to take it longer, we could.
Okay. Did I mention to you that I would be more than happy to go through the house with you virtually, FaceTiming? You don't have to leave your home, and I could go through every inch of the house with you, FaceTiming live. So you don't have to worry about COVID or touching anything. Or how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. That would be amazing. So because I didn't offer it up right away, you still gave me a positive response. You asked the follow-up question. You found out exactly what the objection really was, and then you handled it. Now, sometimes when you're talking to people and you realize you're just not able to really dig out what the objection really is, and you sort of feel in this murky water, if you really feel, hey, I've tried it, I feel like I've asked questions and there's something going on I'm not getting to here. One thing that you need to keep your eye open for is if you need to do what they call leveling up. And that's an indicator that you might not be talking to the decision maker. Now, on paper, someone might be the decision maker, but depending on the personality dynamics in a relationship or whatever kind of relationship that is, you may not be able to identify the objections because you might not be talking to the right person. So in that case, what you really are trying to do is gain access to level up to the next person. So one thing that you might, listen, the easiest question is simply, if it's a brand new conversation and you don't know somebody, it would be a normal question to ask, well, who else is involved in the decision with you? Where it gets more complicated, though, is that typically you've met both people, but one person takes the reins in the interaction with you. And so without insulting them and saying like, hey, dude, it doesn't really seem like you're calling the shots here. You need to, the question that you need to ask to, you know, and hope, and, you know, again, sometimes people don't want to hear the objection. But the question that you need to find a way to ask is how you can get access to the other person. So when you're getting a lot of murky responses, anybody have some soft ways that they could ask, you know, how to bring the other decision maker into it? Anybody have thoughts on that?
Instead of going through the information twice with you and then again with your husband, it makes probably more sense just to go through it once rather than twice.
Yeah, that's a good way, especially if it's towards the beginning, right? If you're getting to the point later in the conversation where you feel that they've maybe identified something that they like, or whatever the next step is as you go through the process, whatever obstacle you're trying to get, when you're not getting around it, that's a good thing to say is, you know, hey, I know you and I have been really kind of fleshing this out. Sometimes what I see is the other person who's been happy to delegate a lot of this information is happy to be in the background. But when we get to steps like this, I find it's usually better if we bring both people in for a quick checkup. And in fact, sometimes it even saves time. I'm sure that's what Susie is looking for, or Bill is looking for, or whatever it is. So you want to sometimes normalize the process. So even though you know that the other party might prefer you always speak with who you're speaking to, take the reins and say, it's very normal that at this juncture, we usually involve both people. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make it sound like it's not for your convenience, but it's to have them on the same page and be able to hear each other interact and make their points together.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And every single thing that comes out of our mouth, that we're often thinking what we want out of the scenario, but everything that comes out needs to have pivoted to, I think that's what's going to be best for you, or I think that's going to save you time. I think that's going to help streamline the process for you. I think that's going to help you feel more comfortable with your decision. Seems like that'll help Bob feel more comfortable with your decision. Every time, everything you say, always. So let's think of some other objections. So, you know, we covered, do we want to go back to the beginning and like talk about what kind of objections you guys are having, even to set an appointment to meet with you, even if that's by Zoom? What objections are you hearing with new leads that are coming in?
No, I mean, I've got one that, who's that?
We're in a recession. I don't know if I'm going to have a job in the next 6 months.
That's great. Oh, you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because that's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes, that, you know, it is a little bit difficult to figure out what the best next step would be. So what I find helps people is if we set an appointment for you and I and your husband to get together. In this world, it'll be by Zoom. And let's make a timeline based on if things stay the same, and a timeline if things change, when we would know if they change, if you're concerned about your job, when we think we'll have more information. One of the things that I like to do best when I work with people, Mrs. Beyer, is really feel like we're a team in this, regardless of when it's going to happen. Let's have a game plan. Does it make sense for, you know, I think it makes sense for us all to get together and have that conversation, don't you? That's probably how I would handle that. I mean, when in doubt, any objection someone throws back at you, you can always use, you know what, I think that's exactly the reason why we need to get together, so that we can flesh that out.
I love that. I have a situation that would probably fit exactly too. You know, they're just like, you know, they want to upsize. They have I don't know, probably 10-week-old baby now. So it's like, oh, yeah, with the baby and stuff like that, we don't, you know, really want to go out now. But between the virtual showings and maybe just setting the appointment to, you know, set up a timeline, and then maybe start getting their house in order, getting it prepped for sale and stuff like that. And if I can get them to, get on a call and set that up in advance, then we could just pull the trigger when they're ready.
Well, I love that example because we can all think of a whole bunch of quicksand they could get stuck in there, right? I don't really want to take the baby out. I'm not really sure. It's going to be a hassle. Who better than you, or you, each of you on the Zoom, who better than you to help them navigate around that? So in their mind, it's looming out here as, I don't know if I want to walk through that big pile of quicksand, but I'm sure you're saying, no, give me the ball. I know how to help you get from here to there, and I know how to help you navigate each of those steps. So you always have to keep your confidence top of mind so that it gives you the courage to keep digging when they kind of give you the, oh, I don't know, we might put it off, we're not really sure. You want the ball. What other objections are people hearing right now? Think of the last few clients you've spoken to. What objections have you heard?
Go ahead. Okay, I was just going to say, I had a meeting with a neighbor who is considering listing her house. They're kind of figuring out, they're not really sure what they're going to do. They either, want to stay in town and just get more of like, a bigger backyard, more privacy, or they may consider moving out to Long Island where her family is. They might, get something smaller so then they can save money to buy like a vacation, like a weekend home out in Long Island. There's a couple different scenarios that they're thinking through. They did meet with another realtor, which actually I was actually happy about, because then I thought that they were more just like really toying around the idea, but since they had already met with another agent, I know that they're more serious about listing.
That is a strangely good sign, isn't it?
Yeah. I was like, oh, I thought it was kind of like she called me on a whim, like, we were talking about something else and it kind of naturally came up in conversation. And I was like, well, I could come by and like give you my thoughts. And I thought it was more of just like an impromptu whatever, when then she tells me like, oh, well, I met with so-and-so and she told me that she would list it for XYZ, blah, blah, blah. So part of it is that I guess this other agent had told her that she would list it for significantly less than what they want and what I actually thought. So in their mind, they're like, well, we only are going to move if we can get X kind of thing. Like they put a lot of work into the house, like they're only going to move if they can get X. And, if they can't get that, then maybe we'll stay and then just get the weekend home someplace else or something like that. So, what I've been kind of toying around with is, I was more, bullish about the price, but then when I heard what the other agent was going to list it for, I was like curious I was like, well, why did she say that, and she told me her reasons why. And I was like, okay, yeah, I agreed with some, not with others. I still think that, this agent initially said like she would have listed in the high 8s. I was thinking like low, like $1 million or whatever. And then the house across the street ended up going under contract that was, slightly over $1 million. So there, then she came back, she's like, well, I might list it at like $999.
So let me ask you
to say,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No. I was just going to say that like, we could be more, I could be more aggressive and have her, we could go ahead and list it or whatever. And
so this is a perfect conversation. Love it.
Yeah.
So keeping in mind that this is a conversation about objections, right?
Uh-huh.
The story that you just told is one I hear from agents a lot, right? So you sort of give me the picture and the blah, blah, blah. Now, I might be wrong. This is just how my brain works. When you're talking to them on Zoom, on the phone, whatever, I want you thinking really clearly about what is the micro commitment I am looking for. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? What is the micro commitment? You're not right now going to say, sign this contract on this house because I have a buyer, right? You don't have a buyer, you don't have a contract. You're not even trying to sell. What is the micro commitment you're trying to get from them right now?
Actually set an appointment.
Yeah, or it sounds like this might have been a Zoom appointment, right? Or an appointment.
It was actually, we met in person.
Okay.
We, we're in masks and all that stuff. So.
Okay, so you were in an appointment. What is the micro commitment that you want from her or him or them?
I mean, we talked about bringing in a stager to give them like a list of what needs to be done to the house.
Agreement on a price. And
No, but
Excuse me.
Maybe. I would say no. If it were me, there's no right or wrong answer. What does everybody else think? If I'm you in that scenario, I only want one thing. Two
Hire
things. I
me.
want what's best for them, and thank you.
yeah,
You want them to hire you. You don't really want to
Right.
run around with a stager and stuff before they hire
Right.
you, right?
right.
Your micro commitment is engagement. You're looking to engage with them. I don't know if that's going to be an exclusive agreement. I don't know if it's going to be a full-on listing agreement. But if you've talked with them a lot, I don't know how much, but given the
Yeah.
story, you talked to them enough.
Yeah.
You're looking for one thing
mhm.
for them to engage you. So what is the question that we're actually going to give you an objection to? What is the question that you should be asking right now to either get an objection or unlock to the next step? Because what
Are you
I'm
ready to-
hearing, what I'm hearing in there is you're trying to solve problems
Mhm.
for them, which is lovely. But you need to be asking a direct question that's really simple, and that is, you know what? It sounds like you guys that we would work really well together. I'd love if we could partner together to get your home ready, come up with the accurate price, and get your house on the market. So the next step for you guys to hire me would be for you to sign the listing agreement and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, so take the price, isolate it, separate it, and say, then give all the other reasons why you should list with me.
Perfect, Ron. Because if her friend says, "Well, you know what, we're really not sure about the price," then to isolate that objection, you say, "I completely understand that. If we come to an agreement on the accurate listing price range, do you feel comfortable moving forward to have me partner with you in this process? Are you ready to sign the paperwork so you can engage me and we can get started?" Everything else at this stage is noise. Now, you're welcome to disagree with me, because some people say, you know what, I never push people to sign things. That's why my friends like me. That's why they hire me. I'm not pushy. I get that, and it's not even wrong. I've been there sometimes myself, maybe once or twice gotten burned, sometimes not. Treat those as the exception. Even if it is a friend, you're not there as a friend. You're there as a professional person. No hard feelings if they don't hire you, sort of. But don't pussyfoot. Get an objection. Getting an objection is better than pussyfooting.
Right.
It's when you're not the person in the hot seat, it's really clear, right?
Yeah.
Is that really clear to everyone else? But yeah.
I think they're also just trying to figure out and I guess that would be where I would help them, is just they can't think through what the process is in terms of.
So you be them, and I'll be you. Okay, so tell me that.
Okay.
We're not really sure because
we're not really sure. There's nothing really on the market right now that we're really excited about. So even if we were to list it and somebody came in 2 weeks and was like willing to offer us our asking price, like, where are we going?
you know what, that's such a great question. And that's one of the things that stops people up from moving forward. It's a chronic chicken or the egg. We can't sell without buying. We can't buy without selling. That's actually why I think you should go ahead and hire me to get started. We can get your house completely ready, do all the staging, all the things we need to do, get all the marketing ready. while we're doing that, we're simultaneously going to be ramping up our efforts to look for a house for you. But right now, today, if you knew where you were going, you've already told me you're not ready to buy because you haven't gotten your house on the market. So until we engage and start the process of getting your home ready to sell, you're kind of stuck, right?
Right.
So I'm confident that the best next step would be for us to do all the listing paperwork so that I can go ahead and start working with stagers and photographers, etc. And that's going to be the best way for us to move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
I'd want to work with you.
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
I said I would want to work with you.
I mean, let's be honest, it does make sense. You can't figure out where you're going unless you can afford both, which some people can, but most people can't, right?
Yeah, that's also actually not entirely clear too, because I did ask her that. I said, do you know, what's the situation? Like, do you have to sell in order to buy? She didn't give me a clear answer on that, but they may be in a position to kind of carry both. They're looking also to, they're really looking to kind of, they don't want to build from scratch their own house, but they do want to kind of redo a house.
So I love that you said you kind of asked for this qualifying info, right?
Yeah.
And you got some murkiness. Great. Yeah. I'm glad you bring that up because it's never as easy in the living room as it is when we talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So if you keep really clear in your mind that the micro commitment I'm looking for is for them to hire me, and you say to yourself, oh, they didn't really answer that question very clearly, then you know that's where you have to go back and dig. But you're driving then, as opposed to responding to this and responding to that. And wait a minute, will you come look at my bathroom? Because I'm not really sure if we should change this vanity. I mean, we've thought about it, but we aren't really sure. Like, right? One way you're in control, one way they're in control. And if you ask them, if you helped them see that it made sense to hire you to get started in the process, and they gave you an objection, that objection would be worth gold. Because if you ask them that right now, what might they say? Give me some kind of objection they might say.
If I ask them,
if you called them, if you met with them tonight and you said, guys, I think it totally makes sense that you just hire me and we get started, blah, blah, blah. Give me an objection. What might they say to object to signing tonight?
Well, we're still not sure if we want to sell.
Totally get that. So let's talk about that. What are the pros and cons for you of selling? What are the pain points if you don't sell?
That we have to stay in our house with a backyard that's too small and not a lot of privacy. And I've got an audience back here.
Oh my God, this is fabulous. Tell them to make some popcorn and watch.
So, and I also
they should be the client. Have them come in.
I know. And I also have like Cinderella over here sweeping. They're trying to,
Hi, you poor thing. We should take you off the hot seat, but this client is just so needy. But
I know. No. So, yeah, no, so we're not sure if we're ready to sell because we're not sure, we haven't quite figured out where we're going yet. So it's like, and if we stay here, then, we built the house that we love. Like we spent so much time and money renovating this and we love everything that we've done. And, we're not opposed to doing this again someplace else, but worst case scenario, we could kind of stay here, live with it because it's what we want, but we just don't have the privacy and the backyard that we were hoping for.
Got it. So not in script, outside script. The good thing that happens when you apply gentle pressure for the next micro commitment, whatever that is, when you apply gentle pressure, the objections come at you a little more clearly, right? If I said to you, if you said, oh, I might go to the store today, I don't know, I kind of wanted to get some saffron, I don't know, whatever it is. And I said, well, Brooke, will you go now? Will you go now to the store? And you said, you know what, I actually don't feel like getting out of my pajamas, so no, I'm not going to go now. All I've done is escalate you making a decision. it wasn't really jerky of me to ask you to go right now, right? You were talking about going to the store anyway. So it's not that it's offensively pressuring someone. It's asking a question which sometimes focuses them to become more clear about the objections, which you then can handle. What other objections have people heard lately? Robin, do you have any objections?
Yeah, I have one, and I think sometimes you can't handle an objection. Like you can't, there's no workaround. I have a client who.
So wait a second, then if you can't handle it, what is it?
Well,
the condition,
when
right?
I say, yeah, well, I was getting a listing and we had the stager come to the house, and then COVID hit. And she has an autistic son who had to get out of a program that he was in Connecticut, and is at the house along with her, other son. And there's a lot of hand-holding with their autistic son that she just can't focus on the house right now or continuing with the process. And I think sometimes you just can't push with that. You can't say, okay, well, here's an idea. Let's keep with this. I mean, I have to be sensitive to the fact that she's overwhelmed with her child right now.
And so having her child at home might be a condition, not an objection. It's probably, like most conditions, some are obvious, right? But like most conditions, it's good to say to yourself, I'm not sure if that's a condition or an objection. I'm going to dig a little further. And you might then say, I understand it's going to be harder with so-and-so home. Let's talk about how that might slow the process down for you. What do you think? And then you're going to get that next layer. Then I'd still say, that makes sense. What else? Ask for a couple of layers. What this book says that I mentioned to you guys about objections is that there's typically magic in the fourth layer. When you ask someone a question, they'll spew the thing that's easy and socially appropriate to talk about it. And then you say, and what else? Is there anything else? They might give you some flowers on the first thing. When you say, and what else? Is there anything else that might be getting in the way? You dig down deep enough that those things, you've given someone permission to say the things that aren't super easy and just socially appropriate. Like when you walk by someone in the street and you say, how are you? And they say, fine. Some people will give you a longer answer than fine. And you're like, oh my God, I totally wasn't asking that, right? You need to train these people that you actually are asking, not fine. How are you really? So you need to really understand pretty deeply how having the son in the house is going to affect their ability to move this process forward. And only then can you understand if it's a condition or an objection. It's a condition. Yeah. Then it's different.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about it. And then the question might be, here's the thing, since I know you want to sell, and I know you can't do it right now while X is home, I think it might be helpful for you if we plot the whole course, figure out what needs to be done, make sure that we take photographs this summer if it's going to be in the winter that we sell X, blah, 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 so that we have everything teed up and ready to go when so-and-so goes back to school, or when, fill in the blank, whatever their when is. But yeah, if that's a condition, then all you can do is address everything else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So are you also getting a, not a listing sign, but a employment type document signed by them?
You mean like in this case, would Robin get an exclusive of some kind?
Exclusive.
I happen to know who Robin's talking about, and I think that if I'm right, they're very good friends, and so maybe you won't. But if this was just someone that was referred to you and you were going to spend hours and hours helping them, then I probably would.
Yeah, they're a very good friend, and when I know someone's going to hire me, I don't bother with. I haven't been burned, so when the time comes that I get burned, I may reevaluate. But if it's a good friend, I don't get listing. I have the stager come. I just do my job as though the listing is signed, and until I get disappointed otherwise, that's how I run my business. Everyone does it differently.
Well, and it probably also depends. The people that have probably been with you in that capacity have been either friends or friends of friends, pretty close, right? If it's farther away, you know,
Yes.
4 levels down. And if they said to you, well, we're interviewing you and Susie Smith,
That's different.
different story.
But when someone says, I'm hiring you, I don't, and they're a good friend, I don't say, okay, let me get the paperwork out. Because I know.
What's key there is that they said, I'm hiring you.
Yes.
If
yes.
they didn't say it, then you're still, in your case, you're saying there are some times when I'm verbally hired.
Yes.
And that's up to everybody, whether or not that's okay with you. You did get engagement from them. You might not have gotten it on paper, but you felt they had engaged you and that you had a verbal agreement.
Yes.
If you didn't, you'd be working on getting that, right? If they said, well, Robin, we like you, we've been friends for a long time, but we're still not sure, we might hire so-and-so and so-and-so. What do you do? Tell me about your marketing.
Oh, yeah, that's different.
You'd be still asking questions to make sure they were comfortable with you.
And I'd get an agreement signed.
There you go. There you go. There you go. What other objections have people had lately? Our buyers, what I'm hearing is that buyers are offering a lot less objections than they used to, because if they weren't motivated, they wouldn't be out. Yeah.
I was going to say, I have one buyer. This was actually when I had mentioned to you previously, they were coming to look at a listing. It was a couple that was looking to like knock down the house and rebuild, and they didn't value the house at all. So they were like just trying to buy it for the land value. But anyway, so I get the sense that they often make a habit of just like going directly to the listing agent. Like they don't like to work with a buyer's agent for whatever reason. So I've had a couple conversations with them. They were going to put in an offer on that house. They ended up pulling it at the last minute. I showed them like another property. I've been like talking to them on occasion, but they've been very kind of coy and like not really sharing too much about what their plans are. They are renting in town, and I just saw that their house that they're renting came on the market, to be re-rented to somebody else. So it says that it's available starting as early as July. So she actually had just texted me as I was getting on this call, because I had reached out to her about something else, and she had said in the text like, oh, let's just, because I said, would you want to bring like a contractor over to this other property that we saw to get their opinion on like what the cost would be to renovate and everything. And she said, let's hold off for now, if that's okay. I hope all is well with you. And then I just wrote her back and I said, oh, I see that your home is up for rent, which is exciting step. I see you're obviously committed to moving. Have you already found a place, or are you planning to rent someplace else? Or like, are you planning to rent someplace else, or are you looking to buy? And so I haven't heard back from her yet, but yeah, so I'm not really, I don't know if she's working with the person. Well, the listing agent for the rental she has no relationship with, because that's the landlord that hired her. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of waiting to hear back from her.
That's one of, let's pretend for argument's sake, assume the worst, right?
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of signs. They didn't seem to want to engage with you before. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're going to work with the builder, maybe the listing agent, blah, 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 blah. We all make decisions in our business. If you're honest with yourselves, you know which time you haven't been engaged, really, especially with buyers. With listings, it's easier because eventually they do have to sign the paperwork, right? And a lot of people work with buyers without having them sign. A lot of people have them signed. Up to you, your business. But sometimes you're taking a ride. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you did, which is fine. No judgment. Yeah. We've all done it. The busier you get, the less you're willing to take a ride, the more eager you are to ask a question, face the objection, which is, look, one of the great things about working with me is that I'm 150% in once I make an agreement, once there's a mutual agreement between a client and I that we're going to work together. I know it sounds like you got, I'm going back in time. I know it
Yeah.
sounds like you guys have been used to doing some of this on your own. I'd love to talk about it, having you guys engage me to work for you so I could save a lot of time for you. Are you open for that conversation? So here, I haven't tried to close them. I haven't tried to close them on working with me. I asked if they were open to a conversation about that.
Yeah.
The smaller the ask, always the better. That's why I like that word micro commitment. You didn't even have to, but you'll either get lucky on this one or you won't. Probably 50-50, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't have, like I said, I mean, from the get-go, I kind of had like I was very leery of them. I was like, they just felt very, non-committal. So
are they friends? Did you say? Are they?
No. She had contacted me directly about, like, I think they were walking in the neighborhood, saw the sign, had contacted me like Easter Sunday, and was like, oh, and they were interested, and I did a virtual showing for them, and then so, and we've had a couple conversations, but
if you could do anything differently with them, given that they're a little slippery, is there anything you would do differently?
Probably that, even just that line that you had just said about, like, I see that you've kind of done a lot of this stuff on your own in the past, and are you open to having a conversation with working together? And just being a little bit more forthright in terms of the just needing a commitment from them, because I do think that there is a lot of I think there's still a lot of misconceptions, even with people who have like had multiple transactions, that they are wary of engaging a buyer's agent because they feel that they're going to miss out somehow, that they're going to get a better deal by going to the listing agent.
Do you
Makes
want
no
to know?
sense at all.
You want to know why that's true? Why
Why?
they feel that way?
Yeah.
My husband was looking at an investment property in Maplewood, and there was an agent listing the house who's outright said to him, and he didn't realize he was the husband of a real estate agent, said, I can get you a better deal if you work with me, as if you become my buyer and I am the listing agent, I can guarantee you I can get you a better deal. So there are agents actively out there promoting that. So that's why they feel that. So either that, and I was like, oh my, I mean, I would just never say that, because basically
they're doing one of two things. They're either undermining their fiduciary responsibility to the seller, or they're cutting their commission.
Right.
And probably most of them don't check the box on the MLS that says variable commission, which means they're breaking the rules. You're not allowed to do that.
And this is a top agent, so it's not.
I'm sure I know who it is.
And I was like, do I call him? Do I tell? And I was like, nah.
You're nicer than me. Well, and what we were saying before, that you always want to put it in the client, what's best for them. So I think the client is that, I'd love it if you guys were open to a conversation about how I can make the process not only smoother for you, but also protect you if you have me working as a fiduciary for you.
Right.
Because you can, right? I mean, if the listing agent doesn't tell them that, XYZ, which we all could think of examples of those kind of stories, you really would be working exclusively for them to protect the value. So
when you go to a listing agent, they already have an agreement with the owner of that home to represent their fiduciary needs. And so how does that math work out, that now they're going to do a great deal for you?
Yeah.
Right.
And if there's some reason that the house may not be right for you, are they going to highlight that if they're looking at, the seller's best interest and or a double commission?
And they're not going to, because if they feel you're putting in a higher price, let's just say they're like, I'm honest with my agents, and I give them comps to try to get them to see what the price they should bid on a house. And I had a client who wanted to spend way more than they should have. And I got comps, and I didn't want to say that's too much money to spend on the house, because what if it's not? So I send them a bunch of comps saying, here, look at these comps and then decide on a price. And they lowered their price.
That's the right way to do it.
Right? Because, you know, I'm going to be friends with these people and I don't want them 2 years down the road saying, well, why didn't you tell me that I was putting in too high a price? But what I'm saying is if you're representing both sides, you can't say that to the buyer. You can't say, here are these comps, just study them and make sure you're bidding what you should, because then you're screwing you're a dual agent. You can't do that.
And so the only question is, would you be open to a conversation with me so that you can understand the pros and the cons of working with someone who's exclusively working for you? Who wouldn't be open to that conversation?
Right. So then I had actually another conversation with another buyer that came in for that same listing. And he is like kind of all over the place, but, and we've had a couple of conversations. And then he tells me, he's like, what did he say? Oh, he's like, oh, I went to go check out this place in, I don't know, wherever, Basking Ridge or something. And he's telling me, I said to him, I called him out on it. I'm like, how did you see this place? He's like, oh, I just called the listing agent. And I said, listen, I said, I said, it puts me in an awkward position. I'm like, if you want me to work with you, I'd be happy to do so. But I said, you can't like go and see a property on your own directly with the listing agent. Cause now if you want to put in an offer, like you've already engaged this other agent.
I can't represent you.
And so, then I had the conversation with him because, it was obvious that he wasn't interested in the listing that I had. And I said, I explained the benefits to working with a buyer's agent. And, I find that it's sometimes a little bit awkward to have that conversation early. Like if he was sincerely interested, if he was still considering, say, my listing, then it's your basic.
I understand what you're saying. You're arguing against yourself. There's some, it's the timing is everything.
Right. So I just kind of, when it became clear that he wasn't going to be interested in my listing, I said, listen, you're always better off working with the buyer's agent because they're going to work on your behalf. And he was like, oh, I never thought about it that way. He was just like, I just kind of assumed that, it's better to go to the listing agent. And I said, no, because they're trying to get the highest price possible for their client. And
but can't you say to them that, and I think this should be everybody's practice, that if you get both sides, you have somebody else negotiating for them so that you're not in that position to.
So I'm just really mindful about the fact that it's 3:32 and I think we might get all kicked off this Zoom really quickly. So we'll say our goodbyes before we jump into that one because I think we're going to get cut off. Yeah, we can even have another class on that. I mean, it is better to have someone at least step in and negotiate part of it. I mean, it also depends on the situation, right? Sometimes it's someone that trusts you like they do family, but it's a better practice. Well, thanks everybody for jumping on.
This is great.
This is great.
Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.